Okay, I'll start out. Good morning. Thanks for coming. I will tell you, this is still, even though the court proceedings are processed, this is still somewhat of an ongoing investigation. So in terms of details, we're going to have to limit some of the details. I will leave the specifics up to Detective Captain Rizzo and Detective Lieutenant Conti to give you guys the details. But I have to start off by thanking our law enforcement partners in Ohio and locally for the quick response and dissemination of the information in this situation. Because of that dissemination of information and the quick response, within minutes of locating the suspect's vehicle, the area was saturated with law enforcement from the Niagara Falls Police Department, the Niagara County Sheriff's Office, the New York State Parks Police, New York State Police, and Border Patrol. Also, ICE and Homeland Security were on alert at the international bridge crossings in case the individual crossed the Rainbow Bridge. All of those efforts led to a quick response of this potentially dangerous individual. Also, the immediate response to handle jurisdictional and prosecutional issues by the Niagara County District Attorney's Office was outstanding. I have to say that all law enforcement, including our officers and the other agencies that responded, exercised great professionalism. Specifically, the officers that took this individual into custody exercised great professionalism and restraint. The fact that this individual was taken into custody in close proximity to a felony crime scene in a crowded area and armed with a knife, deadly physical force absolutely would have been justified in this case. That was not used, and he was taken into custody with the use of a taser. So I have to commend the officers that took this individual into custody for using their restraint and their professionalism. I have to add, we wish these things never happened in a city, especially Niagara Falls, but I will say that this is not a random act of violence, and as you will hear from the detective captain, that the individuals did have a relationship. The suspect and the victim had a domestic partnership. And without further ado, I'll give you Captain Rizzo.
Good morning, everybody. Just after 5 o'clock yesterday evening, we received a call from a man who said he was from Youngstown, Ohio, and that his brother had called stating he had stabbed his girlfriend and left her in a car that was parked near an arcade in Niagara Falls. Immediately, this information was passed on to all Niagara Falls personnel as well as surrounding jurisdictions, especially the New York State Parks Police, due to the location of the falls. Search for the car began, and a car with Ohio license plates was found in a city parking lot next to a large arcade that is visible through a window. A check of the license plate showed that this car was from Youngstown, Ohio, and a check of the detectives peered into the windows of the car, and blood was observed on the back seat of the car. The car was locked, so they made the determination to break the window of the car to be able to open the trunk of the car to make sure that there was not an injured person that was alive inside the trunk. Upon doing so, they opened up the trunk, and when they did so, they did find our deceased victim inside. Contact was made with Youngstown, Ohio PD, who began assisting us in putting together some information on the registered owner of the vehicle, who at that time was our prime suspect. We got a photo of the gentleman, and we put all that information out to the officers and other agencies that were in the area. During this time, a woman went into the Youngstown Police Department and said that she was concerned that her daughter was missing because she had not reported to work. During some conversations between this woman and the Youngstown PD, it was determined that there was a high probability that the deceased woman that we had in our city was this woman's daughter. As such, we began the investigation under the assumption that that was who this individual was. At this time, we are not releasing the name, as we have not confirmed with 100% certainty that that is the case. I only say that because while everything fits that that's who the victim is, we still have not been able to make arrangements to have a positive identification from the victim's family, and until we do so, we're not going to say that that's definitely who it is, but I will say that that's the angle that we're working. So again, working with the Youngstown, Ohio PD, we are presently able to say that we can confirm that this individual was alive at 10 a.m. yesterday morning. We don't know much beyond that. Obviously, we have some issues with just the geographical distance between where these folks are from and where they were found. After parking the vehicle and walking away, our suspect, who is Jashawn Elliott, he engaged in a series of events that can only be described as bizarre. He approached a person that was in the area, borrowed his cell phone to call his brother, and we believe that was the phone call that then led to the call that we received. He then rented a bicycle, and he was later spotted by some undercover narcotics detectives at the area of 3rd and Niagara Street. When they made the U-turn to approach, even though they were in an unmarked vehicle and in plain clothes, I think because he had known what he did, he was suspicious of anybody looking at him. He took off on the bike. A brief chase ensued where he went through the parking lot at the corner of Rainbow and Niagara Street. He fell from the bike. Other officers were converging on the area. When he rose to his feet, he did so with a folding knife open, lunged towards one of the police officers, waved the knife at one of the police officers, at which time a different police officer deployed his taser, striking him, and the suspect fell to the ground. When he was taken into custody, he did have a laceration on his hand, which we believe was caused by his own knife when he fell after being tased. As is protocol, the suspect was taken to Memorial Medical Center, which is what we do anytime somebody is subjected to the taser to make sure that everything is okay, and he also needed treatment on his hand. Upon being brought to police headquarters, Elliott did not want to talk with detectives, and he was subsequently booked on the charges of attempted assault of a police officer and menacing of a police officer. There have not, as of this time, been any charges regarding the deceased woman. In conference with the Niagara County District Attorney's Office, this is a prosecution and investigative strategy where we are able to charge a serious felony that will hold Mr. Elliott in custody, where he will not be released, while we continue to piece together evidence to build a stronger case on the murder side. There are obviously some logistical issues with the suspect, victim, and witnesses being from another state, and this decision allows us more time to methodically put together a timeline that we hope that will identify a more accurate time of the assault, any witnesses to any act of violence or verbal argument, as well as motive. We do know that there is a relationship between Elliott and who we believe the victim to be. We do have detectives en route to Youngstown to pick up some evidence that was collected by the Youngstown PD and to speak with some potential witnesses. As we speak, the autopsy is being conducted, and while we do not have an official cause of death, we do know from the observation of the body that the victim did sustain several lacerations and stab wounds of varying degrees of severity. A large knife was recovered from the vehicle that we believe that was used, but we cannot confirm that at this time until further testing is completed. This knife would be in addition to the knife that he wielded against the arresting officers. So at this time, if you have any questions, please feel free.
Any other weapons besides the two knives?
Just those.
Any idea why Elliott was headed to Niagara Falls? Does he have family here? Does he have connections here?
Anything that we say on that is purely speculation. To us, the obvious reason when this whole thing started was his intent to, commit suicide over the falls. We have nothing to indicate that that was the reason. We have, in the conversations that we've had with people from Ohio, there's no indication that he has any connections to Niagara Falls, no family, no friends. We do not have him in our computer system as ever even receiving a parking ticket here, so we really can't say why.
At this point in time, do you believe the woman was alive when she got into the vehicle?
I don't want to comment on that right now.
Does Jashawn have a history of crime, a criminal record in Ohio?
That's all part of what we're working on with the Youngstown Police Department, and then again, we know that he's from Youngstown, but I don't know other places that he may have lived where he could have been, he could have lived in Georgia and been charged with something. We're so in the preliminary stages of this.
How do you handle jurisdiction? Is there a possibility of him being extradited back to Youngstown?
That could happen, but only if we agree. And by agree, I mean the people involved have spoken, and the decision was made that it's best right now for us to handle it, mainly because we're able to charge him with the attempted assault of the police officer. So we can hold him in New York State for that. And even if down the road it's decided that Youngstown should handle the homicide, he would still have to answer for his charges here, which means that perhaps this may be and We don't know for sure that a crime was committed in Youngstown, Ohio as of yet. We are sure that we have a deceased woman with stab wounds in the city of Niagara Falls.
Can you explain the decision that was made to use the stun gun as opposed to a gun where deadly force was warranted?
I cannot, because I'm not the officer that did that, and I did not ask him why. I would never second guess an officer. All I can say is the decision he made was successful, and we're here talking about one person that unfortunately is deceased and not two.
Is there a certain
Sure.
protocol that must be followed?
I'll comment on that. Like I said, the officers use great restraint. Please keep in mind, these officers go through extensive training, not only on their firearms, but the use of non-deadly physical force. Again, you have to be in that officer's shoes at that exact time to make that judgment, but I think it's important to keep in mind that there were other officers in close proximity of the taser deployment with their firearms deployed. So had the taser have not worked, there were other officers there with their handguns drawn. So again, that's why I say great restraint was used, because deadly physical force absolutely was justified in this case. However, the training that these officers receive in the use of non-deadly physical force absolutely paid off today. And the deployment of the taser was used, and there was still the option of deadly physical force if that was needed.
This was a taser, not a stun gun, right? So the officer didn't approach and touch the suspect.
It's a taser that deploys probes out, and they actually enter the individual and pierce the skin, and it deploys the electrical charge, yes.
Is there any thought that he might have been trying to get into Canada to go over the bridge?
We have nothing to indicate that. As I said, where we stand right now, the actions of our suspect after he walked away from that vehicle were bizarre. We were hoping to be able to get that information from him directly, but he chose not to speak with us. So I think that will, unless we're able to piece things together through video of the area or maybe some witnesses, we may never know.
So he's given you no statement at all?
No, none.
What's a timeline here? Because you mentioned that he has not been charged in relationship to this deceased female. So is there a timeline?
We don't put a timeline. I mean, in a case like this, we have all the time in the world. He's being held, so it's not that society is being put at risk. And as long as he's being held, it affords us the time to make a rock solid case.
You said that he was out in public and there were people around. When he was subdued, were there regular civilians in the immediate area?
Give me a diameter for immediate for you. There were people that were observing what was going on, but when I arrived along with the chief, we were in the same vehicle. There was nobody that at that point needed to be told to back away or anything. I think at that point it was in an area where luckily there's not as much foot traffic as you would see in other areas down there. So I think we were very fortunate for that reason.
How many officers were
Yeah.
approximately?
I can tell you there were in excess of 25 officers in the area within a short period of time. That's really a credit to the law enforcement in Western New York, specifically in Niagara Falls, that were able to generate that much presence of law enforcement that quickly. Within minutes of us finding the car, there were literally dozens of officers in the downtown area saturating the officers. We're very lucky to have partnerships with the Sheriff's Office. We have the New York State Parks Police that are located right here in Niagara Falls. The State Police has a big contingent, as well as Border Patrol and all the other federal authorities at the bridge. So within minutes, we were able to generate and get information out, which led to the sighting of the suspect. So although there absolutely were people in the area, it's the downtown area of Niagara Falls, I would say that him fleeing from the police caused no immediate danger to other people other than the officers, but it's certainly a dangerous situation. But again, I think to generate that much presence of law enforcement in that quick of a time speaks to the safety and security of the Niagara Falls area.
Are you aware of him stopping anywhere else between Youngstown and here?
We are not aware.
Do you know how he got the cut on his face?
I do not know. I know what you speak of is actually, I think, in the photo, but I really don't know how that happened.
Can you clarify on the suicide issue? Did you think, or do you have reason to believe he was trying to kill himself, or was that just at the falls, or was it just a suspicion?
No, it's just, one of the downsides of Niagara Falls is it seems to attract that kind of behavior. I'm sure they have the same problem in San Francisco with the Golden Gate Bridge, and if somebody comes there after committing a serious felony, I'm sure they always wonder if that was the reason. It's pure speculation on our part because we have no other reason to know why he picked our city.
So you wouldn't say that's a belief of yours? It's just,
It's theoretical.
okay.
Oftentimes, just in the city of Niagara Falls, it's our protocol really to alert the state parks police in any type of case of a missing person that's coming to the area of Niagara Falls, because those types of things do happen at the falls. So I would say, you know, that was handled with the standard protocol of any type of suspicious action where we think somebody might be trying to do harm to themselves by way of jumping over the falls.
For clarification, was it the suspect's brother that reached out to Niagara Falls police?
That's how he identified himself, and as of now, we have no reason to believe other than that.
So he was the one that tipped you all off?
Yes.
Okay.
How did the suspect get the bike? I guess I'm confused, because he wasn't anywhere near the car where the deceased female was found.
He wasn't that far. I mean, he was within walking distance. I mean, any tourist that had parked would walk that same distance and maybe decide to rent a bike. Why he decided to rent the bike, we don't know. And he rented the bike, and you know, there was nothing to indicate to the people that handle the bike rental that there was anything unusual. They rented him the bike, and he rode off.
The locations are very close in proximity if you're not familiar with the area. The area that the crime scene was at, where the car was located, is probably less than a quarter of a mile away from where the suspect was taken into custody. The bike rental place is probably less than a quarter of a mile away from there. So it really was contained in that downtown corridor. So it's a very, very small footprint.
What's the name of that bike rental?
I'm not sure the name of it.
Do you know?
There's only one, so it'd be easy enough to
Okay.
fine.
And do you know what time he rented the bike?
We don't have an exact time at this point.
I think we do have an exact time. I just don't know it off the top of my head. So
Where is that bike rental?
it's near the Hard Rock.
Oh, on Prospect?
I don't know. Is it on Prospect? Yeah, it's on Prospect.
Bike rental? Yeah, it's right at the entrance to Falls.
Do you know if he made any contact with anyone in particular, if he had any interactions with people, or had stopped somewhere?
We know obviously that he spoke with an individual whose phone he used to make the phone call, and we know that he talked to the person at the bike rental. Other than that, at this point, we don't have any information or indication that he spoke with anybody else. It's very difficult to find that out because that area of town is obviously a very high transient population. So there's very well, he could have had some conversations with people from out of town who had no idea what went on, and then even after they finished up their day and everything had occurred, they may not even know anything happened that this individual that they would have information about this individual. So, I mean, if this had been in, you know, inside the city proper, you know, maybe people around there would have, you know, they'd all know about the incident and they would have called. But, you know, it's very, very difficult to track down people that, you know, are from outside of the area, from, you know, around the world.
Can I ask an off-topic question?
Sure.
There was a report of a garbage can dropped onto a tourist yesterday. Can you say anything about that?
Yes, we did receive a report while we were conducting this investigation that a family was walking down Rainbow Boulevard near the former Rainbow Mall parking ramp when a plastic garbage can hit the woman in the head that was in the group. Fortunately, we weren't sure of the injuries at first, but fortunately, we found out that she had sustained a broken clavicle and perhaps a concussion, but nothing more serious than that. Not that that in and of itself isn't horrible for a family on vacation. However, it could have been worse. We are actively investigating that as well. Obviously, this, you know, we knew that this was going to be the more popular topic today, but we do have officers and detectives that are following up some information on that case as well.
The two are completely unrelated,
Yeah.
the
Where
two
was that woman
incidents.
from?
She was, unfortunately, well, I guess it doesn't matter where she was from, but she was also from Ohio.
Not to make you go back, I'm sorry if everyone else doesn't need this repeated, but I just want to clarify the phone call that the brother made you. Did the brother indicate he had spoken to the suspect? Can you just kind of go over that phone call again?
What I was told when I first arrived on the scene was that the brother had contacted us and said that his brother had called him and gave him the information, and that led to us looking for the car, which led to us looking for the suspect.
Can you go, what information did he say?
He said the suspect told him that he had stabbed his girlfriend and left her in a car somewhere in a Niagara Falls parking lot near a large arcade.
So he didn't tell his brother he was suicidal or planning to come here to kill himself?
If he did, the brother didn't relay it to us at that time. And like I said, there's obviously been several conversations ongoing in the Youngstown area that, you know, we're putting it together here and there, and we're letting them track down the leads that they need, and we're tracking down what we can here, and then we'll confer by telephone later today and, you know, compare notes.
Would you know if the bike rental place perhaps is called Bike the Falls?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
We were given a description of the bike that he rented.
Okay.
So that, along with the description of the person that we were looking for, was how the narcotics guys were able to determine that was him.
Okay.
Did he pick up the cut when he fell off the bike?
He could have, but it seemed to be a pretty clean laceration, so I feel that he might have. If you've ever seen a video of anybody being tased, they kind of stiffen up and fall over. They don't really have control, which is what makes it easier for officers to move in and secure them. So I think he may have just fell, and the way the knife was, it cut him.
Or he cut himself in his own middle?
Oh, yeah, that's what I think it is. I definitely think that he cut himself with his knife when he fell. It wasn't a jagged, like, pavement brush burn kind of cut.
Sorry to go back to the garbage can.
No problem.
We're going back and forth. Do we have an age on the woman?
I don't. What was it? 50 years old. We'll go here. Come on over. Lieutenant Conti always gets pushed off to the side because he has the rank of lieutenant. However, I would like to say that he was actually the individual from our agency that was the lead on this case, and he had the most conversations with the Youngstown PD and really did an outstanding job in helping us to piece everything together as quickly as we did. It's always nice to have somebody like him. We stand in front of the cameras and we talk about, you know, they, and very often they is he. So,
Lieutenant, can you kind of clarify right now the relationship between Niagara Falls PD and Youngstown PD? Who's, you know, like moving forward, when do you pass the baton? I know Tweelan asked about extradition. Can you kind of go over that again for us?
Well, just as the chief and the captain alluded to, this is something that's a little bit unusual in terms of the location of obviously where the victim and the suspect are from. But I can tell you from the initiative, from the start of this, Youngstown PD and our agency, from our desk lieutenants to the detective unit, has been in constant contact. I talked to one of the lieutenants, I'm going to say half a dozen times last night. Several of the detectives contacted because as this investigation's unfolding, new questions are coming up from their end as well as our end. We're trying to get information. We're requesting information from them to further where we're going to go and point us in the right direction. And they've done an outstanding job as far as being able to determine this information because, like I said, this all started sometime around 5 o'clock, and we were working on it till about 2 o'clock in the morning. So a lot of phone conversations, emails, faxes, sending information back and forth, and that's obviously going to continue.
Could you give your name, sir, just for the record?
Yeah, it's Detective Lieutenant John Conti, Conti.
John with an H?
Yes.
Can we talk about the garbage can? We've got some people asking about it. Can you give us the rundown of what happened, what you know?
Well, as the captain said, it was a family visiting. They happened to be walking down the street past the parking ramp area of the old Rainbow Center parking ramp, and basically just from the sky, a plastic garbage can came off and did strike a 50-year-old female. She was sustained injuries and was transported to Niagara Falls Memorial Medical Center where she was treated. But as far as I know, she has been released from the hospital.
About what time did that happen?
About 10:30 at night.
How big a garbage can are we talking about?
It's probably, it was an empty, I hesitate to call it a barrel, but it was plastic drum, maybe 3.5 feet. Had some garbage in it, but basically paper garbage, nothing, really heavy, although obviously the fall is what caused the injury.
How high would that be height-wise?
Well, The parking ramp itself is 5 stories. If we're going to assume that it came from the top, and if you're going to estimate a story is about 10 feet, then you can call it 50 feet, but that's an approximate.
Do you have any leads on any suspects, or what's the process of that investigation?
Well, just as this is an ongoing investigation, this started, like you said, at 10:30 last night, and we just basically were cleaning up, moving from one scene, and we went to that scene. We are going to do a lot of work on that today. We've got to redistribute some of our resources, but as the chief said, that's very important to us, the safety of all the citizens and the tourists. So we have detectives assigned to that, and they're actively pursuing everything on that end.
Can I go back to the
Sure.
the CCO? One last question. What happens to the body at this point? You mentioned that an autopsy is being conducted right now. After that's completed, does the body go back to Ohio? I presume the woman's family's there.
Well, just as in any case, once the autopsy is completed, the coroner would make arrangements with the next of kin, the family, to make arrangements to take care of the body as they would do for their burial process. So whether it's here in the city or, in this case, Ohio, they would make arrangements with the family and some kind of funeral service to get that taken care of.
It was an attempted assault, right? No officers were hurt?
No officers sustained injury, no. Let me put the pictures. Do you want to ask if anybody saw him walking around?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Are you able to give us the names of the arresting officers, the people who actually took Elliot into custody?
What's going on?
Doesn't affect our case.
Sherbeck and DeSantis, right? It was Officer Sherbeck and Officer DeSantis.
As well as the lady in Palermo. Officer Darren DeSantis, Officer Benjamin Sherbeck, Detective Lieutenant Scott DeLavia, and Detective Joe Palermo. Those are the 4 officers in the immediate area. To be quite honest, there were a lot of officers, in that immediate area seconds, after this. So those are the 4 officers that, that I can give you. But the Niagara County Sheriff's Office emergency response team was in the area and in close proximity, as well as most of the police administration and the patrol division.
And all 4 of them are Niagara Falls PD, correct?
Yes.
Which one was the one who fired the taser?
That would be Officer Sherbeck.
S-H-E-R-B-E-C-K?
Shirbeck. O-A? Sherbeck, I'm sorry, with an A.
With an A.
B-A-C-K.
Yes, sir. Is that it?
Elliot has not cooperated with you so far. Is he remaining to not give statements, or has that changed?
Well, once somebody asks for an attorney, then we stop questioning them, and that's it.
So you have no statements?
We have no statements, and the only way that we would be able to interview him moving forward is through an attorney. Right now, he's just been arraigned, and I'm sure that a public defender was, kind of thrown into the mix. So he doesn't really have adequate legal representation at this time where we've even attempted to speak with him yet.
Is he being held in the jail right now?
He is, but he's going to be transferred to the Niagara County Jail.
Did Elliot do any business at Tony Roma's, or did he just leave the car there?
As far as we know, it's just a matter of him parking there in the parking lot.
I know it's been reported, the Tony Roma's parking lot, because you can see the sign from the
Yeah.
parking lot. It's actually a city,
Okay.
a city lot just adjacent to that business, so.
One thing that we did is we have printed Mr. Elliott's picture. I know that from other sources, media has developed his pictures. We were able to print out a couple copies, color copies. One of the things that we will put out to the media is, as the captain said, we are still obviously actively investigating this, and hopefully by putting out his picture and description, somebody who is in the area that may have had contact with them, whatever it is, we're looking for that kind of information. So I'll give you the picture of Mr. Elliott, and if somebody did have contact with him, yesterday afternoon, sometime around the falls, we'd be very interested in talking to any of those people to see if they can lend any assistance to the investigation.